I've been speaking to Peter Clarke, who is a former Chief Inspector of Prisons and Head of Counter-Terrorism Command at New Scotland Yard, who's now a Senior Fellow at the Policy Exchange think tank.
In the report which I wrote for the Policy Exchange think tank about this, I described it, what I saw from the inquest, as a mixture of incompetence, complacency, ignorance and blame shifting. And I know those are strong words, but I'm afraid that's what the evidence clearly revealed. What really sat behind it, I think, was that no one really seemed to understand or appreciate the risk which Usman Khan posed. 15 or 20 years ago, the intelligence agencies and those investigating terrorist offences realised that ideologically driven Islamist terrorists presented an entirely new level of threat to the public and adapted the way they operated in response to that. But all of those lessons seem to have been either forgotten or ignored by the people who organised the event, the Fishmongers Hall event, or who were responsible after Usman Khan's release for his management in the community.
Which of those things do you think it was? Do you think they were forgotten, or do you think they were ignored?
Well, one of the leaders of the Learning Together programme, Dr. Amy Ludlow, said in evidence to the inquest that her expertise was not in the areas of counter-terrorism or extremism. And in fact, she refused to draw any differentiation between the risk posed by someone like Usman Khan and other people convicted of other types of crime. Now, that to me just shows, I'm afraid, on the part of a senior criminologist, an incredible level of ignorance of the risk that someone like Khan poses, not only to the public, but also to those people, his fellow prisoners, where clearly there was a lack of management during the 8 years that he was in prison, where there was abundant evidence that he was violent, disruptive, radicalising, and gaming the system, being deceitful throughout.
We've had reports into radicalisation in prisons, haven't we? And the suggestion of separation centres, etc., etc. Yet we've never acted on them. What is it, do you think, that prevents the authorities, all of us in a sense, taking this seriously enough?
Well, I think the whole question of separation centres is a very interesting one. That was proposed, of course, in a report that was published back in 2016, not long after I took over as Chief Inspector of Prisons. Now, that report was prepared by Ian Aitchison, former prison governor, at the behest of the then Secretary of State for Justice. And what I sensed was, even before that report was produced, there was a resentment on the part of the prison service to the fact that an outsider had been brought in to look at this problem. And although the government response at the time said that separation centres would take place and would happen, the fact is that the progress has been very, very slow, and I sensed a lot of resistance to them. And the fact now there are just 2 separation centres and I believe about 5 prisoners in them. Now, why it is that someone like Usman Khan wasn't considered as a candidate to be put in one of these separation centres, I do not know. And I was astonished to hear evidence from a senior prison service official at the inquest that there are no plans to review separation centres. Well, one of my recommendations in my report is that there should be a fundamental review of this and also gain some understanding as to what sits behind